I've been thinking about combos a lot, and I've been thinking about what makes them fun. That's probably because I've sacrificed a lot of my free time to Slay the Spire, a digital deck building game that does to deck builders what Hearthstone did to collectible card games. If you don't know what a deck builder is, it's a genre of card games where rather than having a pre-built deck or a deck you build and bring to the game, the act of building the deck itself is integrated into the gameplay and is arguably the core experience. The very first deck builder was Dominion, but as you can see, many have come afterwards, either iterating on the original or taking the idea of deck building and smushing it with other genres. Slay the Spire takes the concept of deck building and puts it into a video game. It encapsulates everything that this genre is and elevates it by unshackling it from the physical realm. And you know what? Just the other day, I played a game of Slay the Spire and I built the most satisfying combo of my life. When you begin a game of Slay the Spire, your deck is garbage. It's not even hot garbage, it's tepid at best. You laboriously fight monsters with attack cards and defend against their attacks with block cards. On and on it goes. But after each combat, you get to add a new card to your deck, permanently changing its composition. And these new cards are wild. Here's the problem. Even if I wanted to show you the combo I've built, I couldn't, because I didn't record the game, but also the card pool is so varied that I couldn't stumble into the same combo again. Thing is, I don't want to tell you about my combo, because combos are solitary and shareable experiences. Okay, I'm gonna ignore everything that I just said and tell you about my combo anyway. I got a bunch of cards that increased my strength. Then I got 4 upgraded limit breaks that doubled any strength that I had. I also got a bunch of cards that drew more cards, meaning I could cycle through my deck until I found a triple or quadruple attack finisher and kill any boss in turn 1. That might mean something to you if you're very familiar with Slay the Spire and all of its cards. But even if this didn't sound like a word vomit from a very nerdy man's cave, I still can't relay the emotional resonance of everything that happened. Nothing illustrates my point better than the finals of the 2012 Magic the Gathering Pro Tour that saw Stanislav Sivka beat Yuya Watanabe. If you've never seen this, whether you love or abhor Magic the Gathering, I promise you one of the most bizarre displays of sportsmanship in the history of the world. Also, I should clear up that even though you build a deck to play Magic the Gathering, technically it's not a deck builder as defined by the genre. For Magic, you build a deck in advance and then play it. Deck builders, you build the deck as part of the playing experience. Let's put things into context. Winning a Magic Pro Tour is a nigh impossible feat. Not only are you shoved in a room with nearly 400 of the world's best players, you also have to play nearly undefeated for 3 consecutive days in a grueling gauntlet of not just wits, but also stamina. And if this wasn't difficult enough, don't forget that Magic has a high skill and luck element, meaning that even the best players in the world can boast a 60% win rate in professional games. And Magic players cheat, and in fact they're so good at it that they've been doing it for years and nobody can tell. For example, the hero of our story, Yuya Watanabe, has been disqualified for cheating in 2019, 7 years after the 2012 Pro Tour. Has he been fudging cards this entire time? Who knows? Point being that winning the Pro Tour wouldn't just be a mark of unparalleled prowess and skill, it would also be validation for anyone who's chosen to play collectible card games as their job. And $40,000, there's also that. Yuya was the fan favorite in this matchup. Even though neither of them had reached the spot of Pro Tour final before, Yuya had been taking stabs at it for years, winning multiple Grand Prix and earning 2 Player of the Year titles. Stanislav was a relative newcomer with no titles, but on top of that, he was piloting a deck that everyone hated, and that deck was called eggs. Okay, sure, officially it was called second breakfast. But that's just because Wizards of the Coast needed a catchier name for the broadcast. The premise was simple: create an unbreakable cycle of gaining mana and drawing cards by sacrificing artifacts the community dubbed eggs to only return everything back and continue sacrificing in an endless loop. The only interaction you had with your opponent was a single card called Pyrite Spellbomb that dealt 2 damage to your opponent every time you sacrificed it, but there's only one in the deck, meaning you had to continuously cycle through the deck and your graveyard until you could deal the requisite 20 damage to win the game. Failing that, there was another card called Grape Shot in the sideboard if your opponents find a way to deal with Pyrite Spellbomb. Not only did Wizards of the Coast feel like they had to create a special segment explaining what the hell it was that this deck was doing for people watching at home, but also after the Pro Tour it was quickly banned and swept under the rug because spectating a match with eggs was tedious. Consider that the game state gets so ridiculous that Stanislav isn't even bothering to play with his hand hidden and just lays it out open on the table. Why try? There's nothing Yuya can do to stop him, and most of his turn just looks like this.
Cycle into a land. Cycle the next sphere into a card that's kind of already done its job. And another card that's already done its job. Serum Visions.
I don't know about you, but if I were Yuya, teetering at the edge of what could potentially be the greatest achievement of my professional career, I don't think I'd take this well, because my role in that match would just be to sit and watch my opponent take one endless turn. Yuya doesn't just take it well, but in a display of showmanship so rare amongst Magic players, he helps Stanislav count his mana totals and the number of cards he's played by turning over dice for him. He didn't have to help him, might as well make him work for it and hope that Stanislav makes a mistake somewhere in the chain. But Yuya does, and if you ask me what I think was going on inside Yuya's head, I'd say that he probably decided that this was the only way he could actively participate in what could be the most important game of Magic in his life. What? This isn't an egg, it's just orange juice. What do you think I am, a wizard? If you ever wondered why Slay the Spire works only as a digital game, this is precisely it. Combos are fun, but mostly just to the person executing them. They went on the journey of collecting those cards and playing them out. They ached over probabilities of drawing the piece that will make it all glued together or flop. And whilst I can certainly appreciate it from the viewpoint of a spectator who has no stake in the game, I don't think I'd want to be an active participant where the other player just draws cards and shuffles the deck for 20 minutes. I don't think I'd want to be Yuya. Talking of journey, let's talk about one of the more popular ones. And no, I don't mean the originators of the hit single Don't Stop Believing, I'm talking about the hero's journey. If you're not familiar with this literary concept, here's a brief explanation of one of the most common storytelling tropes. The term hero's journey was coined by Joseph Campbell, and he described it like this. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. In other words, there's a transformation. So for example, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Tom Cruise are all heroes' journeys. And so are deck builders. Forget for a second whatever theme the publishers put on these card games, or in some cases, whatever style of artwork they could afford to put on them, and consider the narrative of what you do in the game mechanically. What is the scope of gameplay and its emotional resonance? You have your humble beginnings, aka starting deck, you have the supernatural wonder, aka the cards you add to your deck, which also represents the transformation, the fabulous forces, which are whatever challenges the game imposes, and you have victory, or at least you hope you do. And that's why I don't really love deck builders. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy playing them, but only in the same way I enjoy watching Edge of Tomorrow. I had a perfectly pleasant time, but I can't help but feel afterwards like I've decanted an entire jar of Nutella into my mouth. There's no judgment here. If you enjoy deck builders, more power to you. As much as some people, including myself, go on endlessly about finding higher meaning in board games, At the end of the day, we all do it because it's just a good time. It makes us feel good, and that's what drives us. But I can't watch Edge of Tomorrow over and over again unless I'm part of some weird meta art installation. For example, I wanted to buy a copy of Dominion for some b-roll for this video, the progenitor of deck building, but one look at the cover and I developed an involuntary gag reflex. By the way, if you've never played a deck builder, do yourself a favor and get Dominion. You'll be a whole new world, okay? Let's review what we've learned. Deck builders rely on combos to create memorable gameplay, but unlike their digital counterparts, they can't lean on combos too heavily because combos are solitary experiences. Now we're left with a question that most tabletop game designers have been trying to answer for years now. How do we innovate on a genre if we can't forcibly push the thing that most people enjoy about it? You can streamline down until you refine it to its core, like The Quest for El Dorado, a game I would jump at recommending if it didn't have tired colonial overtones in its art. You can incorporate it into other design elements, like Spirit Island, which is also a game I would recommend, but just describing its genre, I end up with asymmetric cooperative hand builder with elements of area control. You can use deck building as a design element to complement or inform an entirely different genre, like what Orleans did with back building, or you can entirely miss the point and come up with translucent cards, so cards become different cards when you put cards together. My word, it's totally different from replacing one card with a different card, because it's the same card, you see, except it's now a different card. I'm sorry, John DeClaire, you're a wonderful designer. I really like Space Base. Or you can do what almost no other deck builder has done before and instead ask the question, what if we're trying to tell a very different type of story? Which is where this video pivots to Fort. Why in the world would I spend 1,990 words talking about a genre conceptually and then pivot to a single game? Good question. Like most games mentioned in this video, Fort is a deck building game and it's kind of adorable. In Fort, you are a kid building a fort and your deck is your friends who are helping you construct it. This is Captain and he is badass. This is Puddin' and she's got style, and style's gonna get you far in this game. And this is Golden Boy, and the less we talk about Golden Boy, the better for everyone involved. You'll draw cards from your deck and acquire new ones which will go into your discard pile. Once you've drawn all your cards from multiple turns, you'll shuffle your discard pile back into a new deck and keep cycling. And that's where the similarities end, because Fort is not interested in doing the hero's journey. Oh no, the story it wants to tell is descent into madness. Each card in Fort is your friend, and your objective is to have the most points, which you acquire by increasing your Fort level. To increase your Fort level, not only do you have to play a card that has an action that lets you do that, but you also have to have the resources required for the next level, which can be pizza or toys. I'll be honest with you, I recognize the whimsy in this theme, but it does very little for me. I grew up in the Soviet Union, and back in the motherland, we didn't really have forts, or pizza, or toys. Your experience might be different. Don't get me wrong, despite Fort being a second edition and an actual reskin, the theme sticks better than anything I could have ever imagined. And not just because of the copious references to glue. Here's some immediate differences from games in this genre. In other deck builders, on your turn, you would be able to just dump your entire hand like some sort of a weird and confused masculine statement of prowess, unleashing a cornucopia of abilities that chain and interact with each other. In Fort, however, you only get to play one card. Each of these cards has a suit, such as skateboards, super soakers, or books. If an action on the card that you played is boostable, you can discard cards from your hand, matching the suit on that action and increase its potential. But inevitably at the end of your turn, you will end up with cards in your hand, and these cards aren't cards, they're kids who didn't get to go out and play. And so instead of hanging out in your lame fort, they will go to the yard. Each turn you're also forced to recruit one new kid, and that kid could be hanging out in the park, ready to jump into action, or, and this is crucial, you could recruit a kid from your opponent's yard. Confirming my long-held suspicion that kids are fickle, non-committal and just like that, your entire world is taken for a turbulent spin. Cards you thought you had would run away, and other cards you thought were great are now rubbish because they combo into nothing. Let me show you what I mean. You can hold resources in your stuff, but you could also sneakily stash them in your pack, which works as extra storage. But also there's cards that will score you a point for each thing in your pack. That's great if, say, I have 4 resources in my pack. I play it, I score 4 points, and in a game where 40 is a winning score, that feels pretty good. But then let's say I spent these resources to upgrade my fort level, someone took away the card that lets me put in more, and now this does nothing. Better yet, unlike in other deck builders where each player starts with a rubbish deck and slowly builds it into something cohesive, here you start with a deck that's been randomly dealt from a communal pile. Only 2 of your 10 starting cards are preset, meaning that every card you hold in your starting hand has the potential to be as good as the best card in the game, except it isn't, because what you're holding in your hand is jumbled nonsense. Slowly and surely, you'll try to tame it into something that does make sense. But much like a card pyramid, no matter how long you try and concentrate, someone will inevitably knock it over in an instantaneous and carefree childish whim. You're never the hero of the story, you're just some kid who thought it would be cool to build a fort, but then realized that much like anything in life, building the damn thing is just a small and insignificant part of it, and mostly you're just managing complicated social groups whilst everyone gets angry with you and leaves. I think it'll be obvious to some of you that this video clearly started as a review of Fort, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this isn't the story that I want to tell. Fort is sublimely simple, but it subverts so much of the genre that if I wanted to begin the conversation about it, I realized just how much I'd have to front load. And you might say to me, Efka, we're seasoned cardboarders, we know what's up, but you'd be surprised how many people in this jargon-riddled hobby don't know what a deck builder is. I don't blame them. Every time I open up BGG, there's like 500 new terms to learn, and none of them are intuitive. Imagine my surprise years ago when I've learned that Eurogames and Ameritrash aren't just a new spin on Eurotrash. Americans, don't look up Eurotrash, it's not worth it. That's not to say that if you've never played a deck builder, you won't be able to appreciate Fort. It's clearly an experiment, but very much a functioning experiment. And sure, it'll take you a game to familiarize yourself with all the strategies and abilities, and honestly, the rulebook could be clearer. But before you know it, you'll be intimately familiar with Skids and Butch and Ghost and Kitty and just how valuable each of these silly kids can be. Which is where we finally come back to combos, because Fort does the unimaginable. It makes me care about other people's combos. If the captain was the ultimate move, the kid de resistance in my grand cardboard scheme, and someone takes him away from me, that's a crap feeling. But whereas other games might just leave it at that in a Nelson kind of a ha-ha moment, Fort takes it a step further and makes you watch other people play with your card, which is excruciating, and yet, because there's a potential that they might neglect it, there's always that faint glimmer of hope that you could get it back. And since you only ever get to play one card a turn, combos aren't these long-winded boasts, but instead an incredible and unlikely turn in a cacophony of orchestra practice where a single note lands just right and sounds beautiful. Fort is not going to be for everyone. If you're new to board games, look, I'm not going to be pretentious enough to tell you that you should first get a deck builder with training wheels. Do what you like. If you think you'll enjoy Fort, there's a surprising amount of fun to be discovered in this box. Just be aware that that fun builds on a lot that's come before it. And I hope that our video helped you put things into context. This video was brought to you by the power of our Patreon backers who enable some of the finest board game media in the world. If you'd like to become one of them, you'll get access to newsletters, or maybe even audio logs, or maybe even a personal shout out like Darko Odik. Darko, thank you very much for supporting our channel. We'll be back very soon.